Hello, everyone, and welcome to Win, Championship Traits for Life, a show focused on strengthening the mental fitness of athletes, coaches, and anyone and everyone that works within a team on any level. I'm Lee Elias, that's JB Spizo, and we are joined today by Captain Ben Harrow. Ben is an accomplished Army Special Forces officer and a decorated American hero. He is also a father, husband, and athlete. Ben's journey in athletics began at a young age, playing soccer, hockey, and lacrosse. He began playing lacrosse when he was in 7th grade while living on Long Island, and his love for the game only grew, eventually landing him to star at attack at Woodbury Forest School in Virginia. In spite of multiple college offers, Ben chose the United States Military Academy at West Point to play for college. After playing for 4 years, 3 in which Army advanced to the playoffs, Ben was given the Unsung Hero Award his senior year. In 2006, he prepared for his first 15-month combat deployment to Iraq and earned the rank of captain. On May 15, 2012, while deployed in Afghanistan, Ben was leading a team of Green Berets on an anti-terrorism mission when he stepped on an improvised explosive device, an IED. He lost both legs above the knee, 2 fingers, and a large portion of flesh from his right forearm. In spite of doctors telling him that he would be restricted to a wheelchair for the rest of his life, Ben refused to accept that outcome. 2 months after stepping on the IED, Ben was out of the bed and moving. In spite of being told his femur was now too short for prosthetic limbs, Ben researched and found an experimental procedure to grow his femur bone back. After multiple surgeries, Ben was able to grow back an astonishing 6.5 inches of his femur, setting world records in the process. The procedure is now the standard for soldiers with similar injuries. If that level of resilience wasn't enough, Ben continued to push the limits of what he could do. In the summer of 2014, a little over 2 years after his near-fatal accident, Ben stood up and walked under his own power. In June of 2016, Ben joined his team on the lacrosse field to participate in the Shootout for Soldiers event. To take it to a completely different level, Ben began playing goalie for the USA Warriors sled hockey team and had such success at the position that he competes at the world stage now with the Italian national Paralympic team as a goalie. In spite of his extensive injuries, Ben continues to define the words resilience, perseverance, and triumph in the face of adversity. We are absolutely honored to have him on the show today. Ben, welcome to Win.
Lee, thanks so much for having me. Thanks, JB.
Glad to have you, Ben.
Yeah, man, the pleasure's all ours. And Ben, just to dive into the first question, because there's a lot to dive into. The first thing I want to ask, though, is about your time in youth lacrosse and at West Point. What made you fall in love with the game, and why did you decide on West Point as a destination after high school?
Yeah, so it's funny because we were just talking about us all being hockey guys before. So how I got into lacrosse was actually through hockey. Grew up playing hockey, started skating when I was a little guy, like 4 or 5 years old. And I got into lacrosse only really because my hockey coach, I was asking him about what I can do to help improve myself in hockey during the summers. He's like, well, go to a hockey camp and then pick up a lacrosse stick, go do something else besides just playing hockey all the time. And just kind of really fell in love with the game of lacrosse. And just so worked out that I went to this all boys boarding school down in Virginia. There was no ice hockey down there. So I was just solely focused on lacrosse and really got into it, and just led me to getting recruited by some top D1 programs and some D3 schools, West Point being one of them. And when it boiled down to it, I was really looking at the Naval Academy or West Point. And it just happened that I felt like I got more love from West Point as a recruited athlete. So that's why I chose them at the end of the day. But, the reason that I was looking at the service academies mainly, and what really drew me to the service academies was for 2 reasons. One is, as a junior in high school, trying to figure out what to fill out on these college applications. They're all asking, what do you want to major in? What do you want to be when you grow up? And at the time, I'm just a high school kid that wants to play Division I lacrosse. I'll go to college and do what I got to do, but I'd love to win a national championship of lacrosse and continue to be an athlete. So I knew that leaving the service academies, I would graduate with a job. I would have 5 years of military experience underneath my belt, and that would help me try and figure out and navigate the world after graduating college. The second thing that really drew me to the service academies, both Army and Navy, they were both institutions where I knew it was just bigger than myself. It would be special to go there. I'd be joining an elite group, whether it's as a mid or as a cadet, and it's just both very special places. So that's kind of why I chose it. That's how I ended up at West Point and was looking at the service academies.
That's Ben. I love your story, and I'm so glad you didn't pick Navy. By the way, as Army Sergeant Major retired. Nothing against Naval Academy. I'm glad you picked. And your career, obviously, I know it probably deeper than others, and Army Ranger and Green Beret, and I love the quote from one of your former teammates, Matt Element, and he said that even when practice was canceled, it was snowing or whatever it was, and anybody that's been to West Point in the wintertime knows the weather sucks.
Yeah.
And because it's on the Hudson River, and Ben would still go out there, find ways to improve himself, being the hardest worker in the room. And so I just like, where do you think you developed that? And can you imprint that on others?
Yeah. I think it's kind of one of those things where anybody can pick up the hard work ethic. I was thinking about this today while I was kind of doing my sauna meditation routine and just kind of pondering life while I was in there sucking for 20 minutes. That I think that portion of the brain, that hard work, that resiliency piece, I think it's like anything else in life where, some people are just born natural athletes, and some people are just born natural musicians, and some people are just born to have a great memory. But if you work at it hard enough and you practice it continually, good things happen. And I feel like I learned that specifically academically and athletically in high school, because I went through this all boys boarding school, kind of really on my own. I'm on an island, and it's really up to you to succeed or fail there. And for me, it was an opportunity to kind of better myself. Not that I grew up in this horrible situation, but I just, it was definitely an improvement of where I was in life at 15, 16 years old. And so being at Woodbury was definitely a step up. I enjoyed being there. I learned on my own that, the effort that you put into things, you get back tenfold. I learned that I decided that I wanted to take Japanese as a language, which kicked my ass first semester, surprise, surprise. And I really had to buckle down and study, and I became a really good Japanese student, and I was able to travel to Japan, and I lived in Japan for a summer as a high school student. And I also realized, the work that you put in the off season. I always say I discovered the gym in between my sophomore and junior year of high school that summer. And I was fortunate enough where my uncle paid for a gym membership for me. And every day I was in the gym, and in the afternoon I was at the track, cause I got my hands on this University of North Carolina football team VHS cassette from the 80s or 90s about how to get yourself faster to be a football player. And I was like, well, all right, speed is speed. This works whether if I'm playing lacrosse or soccer. I want to work hard and get better and better myself. So I'll get my hands on whatever I can. And that summer, I hit the gym like a madman, and I grew. And everybody was surprised to see me when I came back junior year. And I had chest muscles, and I was faster. And it just kind of clicked in my head. If you want it, you got to work for it. It's a simple equation. The reality of it is not everybody's willing to do it and follow through on it.
100%. Ben, I'm really glad you brought up the VHS tapes, because I remember being in high school and going to Suncoast Videos or Blockbuster, or even used video places, just dying for any NHL or hockey videos, because we didn't have YouTube back then. And I always tell especially the young athletes might be listening to this, greatest asset you have from just an educational standpoint is YouTube and the internet. You have unlimited access to literally whatever you want to learn about right now. But yeah, when when I was younger, I used to tell my mom, "There's a video store there. Stop it just to see it." Before I get in the next question with your service, Ben, I did want to ask. I'm throwing this in for the young athletes out there that might be coming to the end of their high school years, right? It's clear that you had a really clear plan of kind of, look, I want to serve, right? You knew what you wanted to do. And I think that when someone has a calling like that, it's very fortunate, especially when you're 17, 18 years old. But there's a lot of kids also that might not know what they want to do, right? And they might not have that path kind of clearly played out just mentally, which is fine. What would your advice be to them, you know, a senior in high school or junior in high school that's just not sure which direction to go?
That's kind of a tough question, you know, like how does a 17 or 18-year-old find their path in life?
Right.
You know, I think it's important to focus on like the fundamentals, right? Like JB will probably back me up on this. The reason that Delta Force is the elite anti-terrorist force in the world is not because they do so many great, amazing things, which they do. It's because they focus on the fundamentals and they're the best at the fundamentals and nobody will ever beat them at that.
Right.
And I think the same in life, you know, what you find passion in, what interests you, those are kind of like your fundamentals. And if you stay strong with that and you kind of follow what you naturally are interested in as a high school student, you know, if it's not athletics, if it's something particular in athletics, academics, you know, I feel like you kind of follow that path and you'll eventually start to peel back the layers of the onion and figure out like what it is that drives you, what maybe your occupation will be in life and kind of where you want to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer because I think too often young people are told you have to do this or this is how you're successful. And the truth is this, you don't want to end up studying something and have a job that you're going to hate the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Even more so, if you know what you want to do, you know what you love, that's great. I know a lot of people, especially in athletics, that go into an athletic major because it allows them to coach the sport later on or stay involved. But there's also a lot of athletes I know that they don't know what they want to do. And I tell them that's okay. You're not supposed to have it all figured out at 18. Like I said, it's fortunate if you have an idea.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when you go to college, try different majors. If you're in a major and you hate it, change majors. You know what I mean? You can't do it 50 times, but
I was going to say, I mean, how fun is life if you have it figured out at 18?
Right.
Like,
That's a great
all right.
point. Right. That's a really great point.
No, and I think it's just trying something new. It's okay. You know, Ben and I and Lee, you know, we've talked about even my path to the military. You know, I joined the Army for the college fund. You know, if you asked me when I joined, I was like, you know, 4 years, that was it. I was going to college afterwards. And 26 years later, it worked out for me. And I think sometimes it's just go on the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Ben, I want to ask you this because, you know, we say it all the time, Lee and I do. And even when we talk, you know, some of these young people, it's like they look at us now, they're like, wow, you know, you're so resilient, you know, you're so mentally tough. And, you know, I say through my career, you know, I was 20 years old and 18 years old in the Rangers. It was probably 2 or 3 years I was in there. I was getting promoted. I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this. You know, there were days I was just trying to make it to lunch, make it to dinner. And I always say that like resilience and mental toughness, it's learned. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think the resilience and the mental toughness piece, you know, it's like any other muscle or skill or talent. It's something that you have to continually work on. I mean, I do that now. You know, before maybe I would push myself and I would go run 5 miles or, you know, something physically that required me to use my legs. Obviously I don't have that that opportunity now. So there's other things that I do to continually work on my mental toughness, ice baths, sauna, just things that, you know, that look, they suck, but like the fact that I'm able to still do that every day, there's a payoff for that. And it's practicing that resiliency piece.
Yeah,
Plus there's a physical, you know, a medical and actual physical benefit to that stuff too. But I think it helps out a lot with the mental aspect.
Go ahead, JB. Yeah.
No, I was saying that Ben and I were in Washington, D.C., and, he had, obviously he's prosthetic legs. He had these brand new sneakers, and him and I walked like 4 miles around D.C. And,
Yeah.
I remember, Ben, it was like you doing a 20 miler, and you were like, nope, I'm good to go. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And I just saw it in you. Yeah, I just want to, one more thing, Ben, that you said is you talked about your, training for lacrosse and everything else. And you talked about two things, which I think are important for athletes. It's that quantitative, doing more reps of the same thing, but also that qualitative, like doing something different. And
Yeah.
you found a VHS tape and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this football workout because
Right.
it makes me, and I think that's so important I think sometimes in sports, we lose creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important too. The human body is so good at adaptations that to really grow, I guess physically, mentally, you need to be able to change it up. Like even working out, you can't be doing the same workout every week. Otherwise your body just plateaus. And I think it's the same thing mentally.
Yeah, it's a really quick story for me. When I was coaching college, my team had a hard time transitioning backing up the ice. And I had to think outside the box. I was only 22, 23 years old when I started coaching college. So my wife and I went to Disney World. And when we were down there was a big basketball tournament going on. I was watching these guys go back and forth down the court. And it clicked that, man, these guys have to transition every 5 seconds, right? If that. So I got back and I brought my team down to the basketball court, and we learned two things that day. One, we really sucked at basketball.
Yeah.
Right? And the second thing though was transition. But they got the message of like, hey, you got to stop on a dime and get back to the other side if you're going to play this sport. It really helped us on the ice. But that's that outside the box thinking, especially if you're a coach listening to this show. You have to switch it up from time to time. So Ben, I want to move on here because this is an important part of the story we're telling today, obviously. One of the questions we asked our guests is to describe a time in their life they faced massive adversity and how they overcame it. And in sports, it's often a major loss, a major injury. For you, this takes on obviously completely different meaning. And I think to give our audience clear context on what you've been through, we'd like you to walk us through the events of 15 May 2012, which is, I've heard you give this story before. For those of you listening or watching this, if you need an anchor when you're playing, or trying to do something hard, listen to this story because it will give you one. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. So 15 May 2012, my special forces team and our partner force were out on a mission, and we entered this village, and I walked through a doorway and stepped on a pressure plate IED in the doorway, which is a booby trap. And I just remember flying through the air for kind of a moment, and it knocked me out just from the blast. And I was dazed and kind of woke up and totally confused. My head was ringing. I got slammed, and I just remember thinking, I felt like my first thought was I felt like I was hit by a car or something just big, like just barreled through me. And my first thought was, all right, maybe they saw us coming into the village and they launched mortars, and I happened to catch like this mortar blast, and they had like the doorway or that entranceway to that first compound like targeted. And I caught this mortar blast. Never thought that I stepped on an IED. In fact, I heard someone screaming and yelling just like bloody murder. And I was thinking to myself, all right, just, be here, lay here, be cool. Can't really get up right now. Something's wrong because you can't get up. So you're probably proud. You're banged up. But whenever the team comes and finds whoever is yelling and screaming, they'll see you. So just be cool and stay with it. And I heard a bunch of machine gun fire, and which was just the ambush getting kicked off. So the Taliban was waiting for somebody to step on one of these IEDs. They had a machine gun position right outside on the outskirts of the village. So my team actually had to maneuver and fire and return fire to get to me. It turned out that I was the one that was actually screaming and yelling. I didn't realize it at the time. And as I was laying there trying to be cool, I was kind of going through shock, and it was just really tough to kind of stay with it. I would kind of black in and out of consciousness. I'd feel like this incredible amount of pain. I'd black out. I would hear myself yelling from like a distance. I would come back to it and just kind of repeat. And it was super chaotic. Just trying to like piece together what was happening, what was going on, the machine gun, just hearing the firing going on in the background, myself yelling, not knowing what was really going on. And I had this moment of clarity where I just remembered this 3x5 photo I kept on my wall back at the fire base in my room of my wife and my son, who at the time was 9 months old when I left, and we did these like family photos. And I just remember focusing on that picture and saying their name over and over again like a mantra, Gina and Peyton. And I just felt like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to focus in on them and suck up whatever's happening. And I'm just Gina and Peyton, just whatever it is, Gina and Peyton. And I assume that kind of like helped me stick around long enough for my team to get to me and start working on me. Because I felt somebody over me and I heard them yelling, holy shit, oh my God, as they were going to work on me. And then it got to this point where I always say it's like if you're ever in the pool and you're like, all right, let me see how long I can hold my breath, and you go down to the bottom of the pool, and then it comes to the time where like, all right, I got to go to the surface, I got to take a breath. It was almost like the opposite, where I just, as much as I was fighting to hold on, I just couldn't. And I remember saying out loud, or I thought I said out loud, at least in my head, I said it, sorry, Gina, my wife's name, and just let go, because I couldn't hold on anymore. And so what had happened was, I walked through this doorway, stepped in an IED, kicked off an ambush. I was laying there. My right leg looked like what you'd see in like a cartoon of like an exploding cigar, of just like this bone and meat, where my right foot was. And then my left leg was so badly mangled and tore up. Obviously everything on my right arm was broken and tore away at. The doctors told my wife that my teammates did like a textbook job of working on me, of applying it all over me, which helped save my life. That was the first thing that helped save my life. The second thing was, in a case like this, they told her that it really comes down to the patient about being mentally tough enough to deal with the trauma, and the fact that I was able to stay with it long enough for them to work on me, medevac me to the trauma center, which it was like a 10-minute time difference from point of injury to pulling into the stage 3, Rule 3 trauma center in CAF at Kandahar Airfield. Those two things really boiled down to saving my life. I ended up losing 75 units of blood, just from bleeding out, there on the ground by the time that they started putting tourniquets on me. They told my wife, she was like, all right, well, when they finally got in touch with my wife, she was ready to get her passport and fly to Germany or wherever that they were going to medevac me to. And they told her, like, look, the reality is he's still not out of the clear. This is still like a very delicate situation, and you could be on a plane flying to Germany to meet him when he's really, he's expired, and they're flying him to Dover, and no one's going to be there to receive the body. So, I spent 3 days intubated and sedated, and I ended up waking up in Landstuhl, Germany. And when the doctors finally woke me up, apparently they had tried to wake me up 2 times prior, but I was fighting them and very aggressive. So they gave it one last time, and they wanted me to at least be off the respirator and breathing on my own for the flight back to the States. So able to wake me up. I remember what felt like this female presence waking me up, a nurse or a doctor, I imagine. And she said, "Captain Harrow, do you know where you are?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You're in Landstuhl, Germany." So right away, I'm starting like to put all the pieces together that something major happened to me. I'm severely banged up. I'm very injured, just because I know that they send the most serious casualties to launch stool for medical treatment and recovery. Still not thinking that I stepped on an IED. Just, all right, I'm badly bruised up. I probably broke something. I'm effed up. That's it. She said, do you know what happened? And I said, no. And she said, well, you stepped on an IED. And I said, okay. Did I lose a foot? Thinking that I was, all right, well, shit, I probably just lost a foot. I'm a single BK. I've seen guys run around with much worse. I'll be fine. It's just, tell me what it is. And she said, well, no, actually you've lost both legs. You're above the bilateral above the knee amputee. And I was silent for a second. I said, okay. And I'm like, all right, do I have my arms? Because I can't see anything. It feels like my five senses has just been reset. And I'm running down the list. Like, do I have my fingers? And she's like, well, the doctors, you lost two fingers on your right hand, and the doctors are going to be able to save your right arm. So, that's good. And I was like, all right. And ended up passing back out. And to be honest, that's really all I remember about launch stool. It was really just this kind of crazy trauma / drug induced blur from all the narcotics and stuff that they were pumping into me. And, I'll end the story with this. I ended up getting medevac to Walter Reed, and the first 2 weeks at Walter Reed, I'm going through washouts Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I have 4 bacterial infections and a fungal infection still from all the dirt blown up into me. And they finally, after 2 weeks, able to close me up and let me start healing. And like I said, I was on so many narcotics. I was on ketamine at one point. So I was having these crazy hallucinations of the Grim Reaper in my room, which I was trying to be cool and not tell anybody because I didn't want them to take me off the meds because everything hurt so bad. To wean me off the ketamine, they were giving me methadone, which is, something they give to heroin addicts to wean them off heroin. And then I was on the normal regimen of, a morphine drip, oxy, 2 different types of Oxycontin, like instant release and slow release. So I was on this just huge regimen of narcs. And after about week 3 or 4, when I wasn't going to surgery all the time and starting to realize kind of what was going on and figuring things out and, being reunited with my family and just starting to put the pieces back together, I just realized, step 1 is I got to get off the meds because I can't think like myself. How am I going to make decisions to figure out what's next? Obviously everything hurts, but I got to get off the narcs because I can't think straight. So I guess it was week 4. I just refused all my pain pills when they were coming around and handing out all the meds. And I said, nah, I'm all right. So of course, the next morning, the doctors come and they're making their rounds and they're like, Captain Harrow, what's going on? The nurses tell us that you're not taking your pain meds. And I was like, well, yeah. I was like, obviously everything's not all right, but I don't want to take the pain meds. And they're like, look, don't be the overly macho Green Beret. The pain meds are there for you to use them if you need them. It's pain management and it's going to help you heal. And I told them, look, I totally get it. I understand pain management. I understand it's to lower my blood pressure and help induce healing. But I'm ready to get off the pain meds. And usually guys don't get off the pain meds till some are almost a year out and they're still taking narcotics in some shape or form. And so I just refused all my pain meds. And that week off of narcotics was probably one of the most painful that I could remember. Not only because of the nerve pain and my body freaking out, my nervous system freaking out because it's my brain sending signals down to my feet. My feet aren't responding. So what I get is this crazy hot stinging sensation. Almost sometimes it felt like these hot metal hands were crushing my feet where my feet were supposed to be, but obviously nothing down there. And then I'm going through withdrawal at the same time. So every morning I'm throwing up, just have no appetite. And after about 3 or 4 days of going through that, just being able to suck it up because I knew that was going to be better for me at the end. Plus my wife was there to help me kind of get through it. You know, she would go get the bucket for me to throw up in, or tell the nurses that, you know, I'm about to throw up again. Or should be patting my head, just trying to confuse my nervous system and to focus on the tapping sensation on my head or the end of my stumps instead of my nervous system freaking out and trying to figure out where my lower appendages are. So after about that whole scenario for about 4 days, I kind of broke through this like plateau and was just, all right, like on to the next thing. You know, I figured out the whole narcotic pain thing. Now let's figure out how I'm going to get up and start walking again. So that was, you know, there's more to that story, and I can kind of keep going on about how I got myself up and walking, but that's kind of like the first, that right there is like the first, I guess, month and a half, 2 months in the hospital.
It's just absolutely, you know, Ben, absolutely amazing. I've heard you tell that story again, and each time, you know, it's just, you know, the hair on my arm stands up. And then Ben, when did you, I know that you started like getting back in the pool and doing some scuba stuff, right? For refitting. When did you start that?
So that was probably within the first 3 to 4 months once I was able to, once I was closed up and able to kind of get blessed off and written off by the doctors that I can get in the pool. You know, I was on a dive team. I didn't go through dive school. I did a pre-scuba. So I just remembered a lot of great workouts that I did, that, you know, didn't involve me running, that I used to help me get my cardio back. You know, I stepped on that IED, a 215-pound tactical athlete. You know, I was just ready to run through a brick wall, could have run through a brick wall, you know, doing, you tell me to go from point A to point B, I'll do it in record time. Woke up, I was 125 pounds and just decimated. You know, I'm sure I've sent you pictures, and there's something on my Instagram too, of like comparing like the before and after of me in Walter Reed trying to lift a 10-pound weight again, you know, a 5-pound dumbbell. When I was bench pressing 110s, 120s, and then now a 5-pound dumbbell is like a struggle. So it was just starting from scratch. But one of the things that I just remember was being able to do great workouts in the pool, and really, you know, getting my cardio and strength back up. So that was, I tried to get back in the water as soon as possible just to help the recovery process.
Yeah, I think Ben, I remember when we did that, you know, you were able to talk at that Who's Who dinner before the Super Bowl. And I remember when we were walking around and, you know, having a few beverages afterwards, and somebody asked you like, you know, oh, it's you know, you lost your legs, everything else. And I remember you like pointed you and you said, I got my brain.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, I got my brain. I'm good to go. And I just like, I just was like, wow. Like, you know, still just so thankful about everything. And I never forgot that.
Yeah. So. You know, it's funny. You know, so going back to when I first got injured, or they had flown me from Germany back to Walter Reed, and, you know, I would shut my eyes and I'd open my eyes and had no idea how much time had passed, and I'd be like somewhere new, and I'd shut my eyes and I'd open my eyes, and now I'm on the plane. I'd shut my eyes and open my eyes. I'm somehow off the plane. And I remember we get to Walter Reed. I'm on a stretcher. It's all such a blur because, you know, it's like my friends from West Point that I played lacrosse with standing next to my special forces friends. And it's so weird to me because these two worlds have never collided. So it's just totally bizarre. And they wheel me in. I see Gina, my wife, as they wheel me by, and I think I just said like, "Hey, babe," and like, you know, and then they wheel me into the elevator, and I think everyone was like, "Well, that was kind of normal. Like that wasn't what we were expecting." And we get into the elevator, and Gina's there, and some of my other friends were in the elevator as they were moving me up to the ICU when I first got to Walter Reed, and I turned to Gina and I said, "Well, I guess my dreams of being a calf model are shot." And she's like all embarrassed that like I'm like cracking jokes, And but she told everybody, you know, when people would call and be like, you know, what's going on with Ben? We're so sorry. Like, how's he doing? She's like, you know, it's great, but kind of scary at the same time. Where, you know, obviously he's injured and he lost his legs and he's banged up, but it's just Ben, and now it's just Ben with no legs. And I'm very fortunate in that regards. You know, obviously there's a lot of guys that get banged up and they're not as mentally sharp as they were. You know, they don't have it still. But it's true. You know, I still have my wits about me, and I'm still ready to get it done. You know, I'm still setting goals. I'm still achieving things. It's just now I have to do it on a set of robot legs and, you know, a wheelchair, and figure out, you know, what to do. You know, it's I think that also a lot of guys that come from the special operations community that have these type of injuries do normally, I think, fare a little bit better than guys that come from the conventional side, just because we were selected for these units because we're mentally tough. You're cold, you're wet, you're tired, you're hungry. It doesn't matter. If you have to walk from point A to point B, then you walk. If you have to crawl from point A to point B to achieve the mission, then you crawl. You know, whatever it is. And that's kind of how it is now. It's not, you know, we are always, you know, Green Berets were these like adaptive, you know, mind ninjas, right? Where we have to figure it out. You know, you're given this crazy ambiguous situation. You got to figure it out. You know, the environment's not going to change to you. You have to figure out how to adapt to the environment. And that's kind of what I'm living now every day. I apologize if I'm rambling on these answers, but it's just,
not at all.
Yeah.
I think we're catching our breath a bit too, man. It's just what you've been through is incredible. You know, I'll say this to you, Ben. You know, no one would have blamed you if you had just settled after this and just settled down. But that's just not you. From everything I've read about you, everything JB tells me about you, and your will not only to walk again, but to compete under extreme odds is really unmatched. And you just tapped on this a little bit, but, you know, keeping in mind the audience and, you know, the athletic side of this, what experiences did you have to draw from? Right. So again, the story is clear, you know, what you've done. And again, we'll get into the story, but from a mental standpoint, like I said, the fortitude to just drive forward, and you continue to do this. What experiences in your life did you have to draw on to either start that engine or just put it up to full rev?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think we kind of touched on it before with just understanding hard work, and how that pays off. And, you know, I think about, there's like certain moments. First off, has just, athletics has been like the best thing for me looking back, character building, you know, who I am as a person. I mean, now both Gene and I, like with our kids, it's important for them to be athletic, to raise athletes. You know, Peyton, my son, he's 10 years old, loves soccer, would love to play in Europe one day, probably could play in Europe one day. But I tell him, I was like, dude, you're 10 years old. Like, it's important for you to be an athlete, you know? So this week he's at hockey camp. You know, he has other sports and activities that make him an athlete, because I know later on in life, you know, just as I learned from my past experiences, and Gina too. Gina was a great high school athlete. She was a swimmer. She played lacrosse. She probably could have swam in college, but she had a shoulder injury. It's important to understand the hard work ethic that comes with athletics, the successes that you get at athletics. You know, it's not just all the wins, but it's also the failures that you have to be able to look back as an athlete and kind of internally, you know, address and say, all right, you know, I didn't make the team this year. Why is that? We lost this game. Why is that? And then move on from there and understand, all right, well, if I work a little harder on this, then I'll make the team. If I work a little harder on this, then we win the game. And I was just able to, because I think, you know, where I was at school and in life at the time, I realized that at a young age, and I was able to kind of like internalize that, and in turn, I was able to use that in other areas in life, with getting into a service academy, going through selection, making it as a Green Beret, eventually learning how to walk again. You know, continuing to push myself. I'm very competitive, so I wanted to play hockey again. I ended up, I tried out for the U.S. Paralympic team. That didn't work out. Well, all right, I'm really not one to just get told no. So I discovered that Italy had a team, and I realized that I qualified for Italian citizenship. So I reached out on Facebook and I said, well, what does it take to play for the Italian national team? And I realized that I qualified, and got invited to fly over there for a tryout, and ended up making the team after their like first weekend of practice, and ended up playing with them a couple times at international level, and
taught yourself Italian, didn't you?
Yes, that is
See?
true.
That's right. So part of that, right?
Yeah.
Because you were in the locker.
You
You were in the. I remember you telling me you were in the locker room. They were all talking Italian. You're like, okay, I'm going to have to learn this, and you taught yourself Italian. So look at it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, it was. I knew that I had to learn the language. Being from 7th Special Forces Group, I already knew decent Spanish. The language isn't too different from Italian to Spanish. I confuse words all the time now whenever I'm trying to speak Italian or Spanish, like in a major conversation. I'll throw in one of the other language, some paroles or palabras. But yeah, I just knew. I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to play goalie, I got to be able to talk to the team. Like, I'm the guy in the back calling out where the puck is. I can't just yell left or right. I have to be able to say like sinistra, destra, like I have to explain in their language. Once again, the environment's not going to adapt to me. I have to adapt to the environment. So, trying to bring it back to what we were talking about, or what you had asked, I think it was just how important athletics was for me at a young age, the lessons it taught me, and how important it is to be an athlete. And I'll say now, even in like the corporate setting, to be able to have that work ethic, like JB, like we were talking about before with our mutual friend, and how I met him and was able to fix his plane and get that up and running. That wasn't just like, hey, I'll go meet him on Monday and we'll have this fixed on Friday. That was like, I think that we're almost at the 2-year mark from when I first met him to, working on getting in front of him, working on figuring out a plan. How am I going to make this work? What are all the different elements I need to bring together to synchronize this? How am I going to present it? And, not wanting to fail, wanting to win, wanting to succeed. So a lot of those lessons as a young athlete, and just being athletic, I think that helps in life, all throughout all branches of life.
JB was telling me a story about you with returning to your special forces unit. JB, did you want to lead that one? Because I found this fantastic as well.
Oh, I just think I remember, Ben, you said, I'm not returning to my Green Beret Special Forces unit until I can walk in there. And
yeah.
And I just was like, that's just so amazing. If you could expand on that story for us?
Yeah, I mean, look, I got injured in 2012, and the guys on my team, when they got back from Afghanistan, they came up to the DC area and visited, and was always close with them. Still am close with them. The leadership from group, they would come up and visit and check in on me, and they're like, look, whenever you want to come back, we would love to have you. And I told them, I was like, look, I would love to come back, but I'm not coming back in a wheelchair. I need to come back walking. And it took about 4 years, just because I had to go through that whole bone lengthening procedure and then learn how to walk on prosthetics. So it took about 4 years, but it just meant a lot to me to, obviously I was banged up and not the same Ben Harrow that left 7th group, but I wanted to be the closest thing to that. And, being able to walk under my own power, not on my own 2 feet, but my own 2 robot feet. It meant a lot to me, and to be able to stand in front of the battalion, to be able to stand in front of my own team for what was basically my retirement ceremony. It meant a lot to me. I didn't want to seem like a victim. I didn't want to seem, obviously I'm injured, but I just didn't want it. I just didn't want people to think that it had like stopped me or encumbered me. It may have slowed me down a step, which is, just the nature of the injury, but it certainly hadn't stopped me. And that was important to me.
No, that's exactly, Ben. I've never, as long as we've known each other, you've never, ever once played a victim card, anything else. In fact, you're out front leading the way on anything. Ben, I wanted to ask you, because we're helping athletes, and, pressure comes with competition, practice, fans, coaches, that sort of thing. And, how do you stay in the present moment under immense pressure? And how did you develop that skill?
Yeah. I think it's that, it's figuring out how to get into that zone, right? That athletes talk about, and being in that zone. I wish 40-year-old Ben Harrow today could talk to, 16-year-old Ben Harrow back in the day, playing high school lacrosse and playing in high pressure moments. Just everything I've realized now, I think part of that is about, it's the mental preparation. I think a lot of times as athletes, unbeknownst to us as young athletes, just you're practicing all the physical stuff, right? So you're working in the weight room, you're working off season, whatever it is, you're working in your sports. But I don't think guys and girls work enough or develop enough of that mental piece. Not just mental toughness, but like the mental preparation. I wish, I'm real big into breathing, breath work, and meditation now. And I that helps me a lot with my day to day, like even, how stressful life can be now as a president of a company, father of 2 kids. I just moved from Maryland down to Florida. So like there's been plenty of breath work going on, and focusing and staying present in the moment. But I think a lot of that, it helps. It helps so much. And I think athletes, they're doing themselves a disservice if they're not starting to learn about, teach themselves about, or ask about how to prepare themselves mentally. And like I said, not just the mental toughness piece, but the mental preparation, how to get into that zone, how to get into a flow state, and how to stay in a flow state.
Now, I think that's so important. I know Lee's going to ask you about your regimen and everything you do. And I think you're exactly right. Like, we forget this piece of, just kind of, preparing ourselves and taking a moment, a lot with my business clients, Ben, I use this, the SEALs, stop, look, listen, smell.
Yep.
And we do that in the military because, when you land on a helicopter and it takes off, just to take a minute to, like, all right, let me take all this in. And it's, look, we're the run and gun society. Look, I'm drinking a coffee on the go. Everything's that way. We don't take any time to actually take a step back and do that. And that's what athletes should do.
Yeah.
And that's what you brought up. Yeah.
And if I may, guys, what's funny about athletes is that they have a better grip on this than they realize, right? We always talk about being in the zone, on the court, on the ice, on the field. Okay. If you've been in the zone, you've been in the present moment, because that's all it is. You're just extremely present. And, it's something you can practice all the time. I always say, reflect on the past, look to the future, but live in the present moment, especially if you're a young athlete. It's tough not to look ahead, your dreams, your desires. And I'm not telling anybody not to have that, but you have to stay present if you want to accomplish them. Ben, the thing that stood out from your story, which is just an incredible story, and it never will not be, is in that moment after the blast, when your body and mind were pretty separated, the present moment brought you to your family, right? And again, I'm not going to presume for at all that I have any understanding of what that moment was like, because I don't. But I have to imagine from what you were saying, that was as present as you could be in that moment, was to be with your family mentally. And that from what you said, helped you survive. Right. And this is an extreme case of present moment awareness, right?
Yeah. It's actually really interesting that you present it in that fashion of being, present in the moment, right? Like, but it's true. It 100% is true. Look, I was not focusing on anything else, but that being present in that moment and what was important to me and what I was focused on. And I was just determined that, look, bleeding out on the desert floor, nothing was going to take me away from getting back to Peyton and Gina. And like I said, it really was like a mantra of just, I kept saying their names over and over and over again. And it was what I was focused on. And bringing it to athletics, it's the same thing of that mental preparation of being present in the moment and being in that flow state of just focusing on, what's important to you. The trick is to, I think, and kind of on that snap to be able to enter that flow state. And that's the trick. And that's the practice that comes with it. But like anything else in life, it's a discipline and a practice. But yeah, it's so, if you can figure that out, that's right. That's what takes people to the next level of being able to achieve that mental aspect.
And before JB, you asked this question, I want to say that specifically on what you're saying, Ben, there are people that live and die having never done that ever. Right. So sometimes when I speak to young athlete, they go, I can do it, but I have such a hard time getting back there. The fact you can get yourself to the present moment is a big deal, because there are many people that can't even do it. I mean, it takes practice, right? I'm in my late 30s. I practiced this for 10 years. I'm still nowhere near where I want to be with it. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to give yourself permission to be patient with it, especially if you're an athlete. And it's something you have to work at, right? It's not something like, again, I like the snap analogy, because like I'm in a position now, I can snap myself out of it pretty quick, but I still get to a point I need to be snapped back into it. You know what I mean? So it's something you have to practice. And like you said, it's no different than a skill, right? Like a lacrosse skill. I'm just going to call lacrosse what it is, which is grass hockey, but it's no different than a skill, right? You just, JB didn't like that one. No, it's hockey on foot. Let's be honest. No, I'm just kidding. Lacrosse players out there, but it's a skill you can develop like any other athletic skill. You just have to practice and learn and take the time and be patient.
Yeah. And sorry, I was just going to say, thinking back about how I got myself prepared mentally before games for lacrosse, just like probably like a lot of guys in different sports, you warm up. But what I like to do with my warm up was I would go before the team even walked over to Mikey, and the stadium, was set up for the game. Nobody was there yet, but it had that like Saturday game day feel. I would walk over there early, and I would just run a couple laps around the field. And I just, I felt like my five senses, I would smell it, I would see it, I would hear it, I would taste it. And that just said, the sweat, and I would get my heart rate going. I would start to get in the zone, now the feel, and it's like this flow state. And then the trick was to kind of keep it going without burning out the entire rest of the afternoon.
No, and I think, all of this, as far as like athletes and business people and Lee, Ben and I are working on a book, and I hope we entitle it, Enjoy the Journey. I think a lot of times, again, we're not in the present moment because we're worried about other things, and we forget what we're doing right now. Right. We forget the fact that, oh my gosh, this is so important, and let's enjoy it while we're doing it. And I think that's even sometimes in society, we forget to do that. Ben, I want to ask you this question. You know, I believe it. I'm sure you believe it, that the military is the greatest team on the planet. What is it that makes the military so special, and how can we apply that to teams now? How can teams take some of these military concepts and form their bonding, chemistry, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So definitely, you know, I had the privilege of serving in a special operations unit and 7th Special Forces Group. And, you know, to be there, you have to be selected to be there, and everybody wants to be there. And I think it's the same with sports teams. You know, everybody is strapping it on because you want to be there. You know, everybody is strapping it on because you have this common goal. And not only do you guys, you know, not only do you enjoy the fruits of victory together, but you also endure like the grueling punishments that come with it. And I think it's a punishment piece that really brings people together, right? It's like that suffering as a group that really bonds people. But yeah, I think it's that common unity and everybody rowing in the same direction of, you know, we all want to be here, we all want to win. But I do think it's the real glue that bonds a team together is that like suffering piece. And I mean, I'm sure you remember going through some of like the toughest Army schools, like Ranger School. You don't really have bonds like that, you know, doing 500 flutter kicks in the pouring rain at 2:00 in the morning because you just got blown out of your fire base, like up in Dahlonega. Like probably you felt bonds of like going through airborne school where you're just kind of like slowly shuffling from place to place. You know what I mean? Like it's those tough and really tough events that help bond you.
And I think, you know, everybody, you talk about winning. Everybody loves to win. Everybody wants to win. But I think the one thing the military, you know, breeds, especially in, you know, select units, special ops units, is, you know, we breed like loving the battle, loving the training, loving the competition. Even, even Ben, you and I, you know, we'd be like, okay, let's do push-ups. Okay, I'll do 20, I'll do 25. It goes back and forth. It's just, you know, you breed this internal competition. And then when it does that, then all of a sudden, you know, winning's just a byproduct of that. So,
yeah, the competition piece, I think, is another great point, JP. I mean, just it's that it's almost like it's nature. Like you know, it's like science. It's natural. You know, you want to compete. You want to be better. You know, to dominate in your sport.
Yeah, I absolutely.
You know, I'll say this too, is that, and one of the things we want to accomplish on the show, Ben, is that, you know, we don't want to just ask about the big win, right? We want to ask about everything that happened to lead to that win, you know, especially in sports. So often you have to lose to learn how to win. It's not all the time, but, you know, if you look at even Stanley Cup champions, like current champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they had one of the worst losses in first round history in the NHL just the year before they won the Stanley Cup. And there's numerous examples across sport. But I think that that's something that, you know, when you talk about enjoying the process, part of that process is pain, and it's learning, and it's adversity, and it's going through it together and learning how to deal with other people. And it's a fantastic gift if you're able to experience the highs and the lows of that, because it will make you more prepared. I have one more question, but please share your
Well, no,
thoughts.
I was just going to say, you know, along those same lines, one of my favorite hockey documentaries is the Gretzky 30 for 30. Just talking about him, you know, playing for the Oilers, and then when he got traded to LA, and he says he's talking about I forget which finals it was, but the Oilers. It was the last year that the Islanders dynasty won the cup.
1983.
So 83. You know, Gretzky and Messier and all those guys. They lost to New York, and they're like, you know, all heads down, and they're like, great. You know, now we're gonna go back. You know, we're gonna hear them in their locker room celebrating and yelling, and it's just gonna sting even more. And Gretzky says that they walk past the Islanders locker room, and it's like dead silent in there. And he's like, what's going on? And you know, he's so surprising. He thought they'd all be cheering and yelling because it's the Islanders dynasty team. And he looks in and everyone is just dead tired. And it clicked. And he says that he realized that's what it takes. He said, you know, he's like, you have to be able to sell out that much to win this trophy, where at the end of the game, you're too tired to even celebrate. He's like, he said, I just remember watching that and like thinking, yeah, that makes so much sense. You have to be willing to sacrifice and sell out. Like if you want to achieve, it makes sense. Like I said, you know, the equation is simple. The tough part is actually following through.
Absolutely. I love that story. And if you guys haven't seen, go watch any documentary about Wayne Gretzky, because I think he tells that story in any of them. But you know, a man who was gifted with an incredible skill set. But my favorite thing about Gretzky is people say he's a better person than he is a hockey player. And if you look at his stats, that's an incredible statement. So Ben, I'm going to move on to the last question. So I've been told that you have a pretty extensive mental fitness regimen, including sleep, mindfulness, yoga, other things. You've alluded to some of those on the episode. Our organization, Pivotal Moments, and this channel, Grit, it's all about mental fitness. So can you walk us through what you do, what it means to you, how you apply it, and anything that our audience would benefit from hearing?
Yeah. So first off, I think my mental toughness regimen, it's been getting pieced together, you know, since I was a high school athlete and trying to figure out, you know, how to better myself as an athlete. You know, nowadays, I do, you know, we were talking about it before. When I have the opportunity, I get in the ice bath, just to for the recovery aspect, but also the mental aspect of being able to push myself and kind of suck up and get into the cold water. When I'm not able to do that, or if I have the sauna, once again, for the obvious health benefits of all that, getting into the sauna for recovery, but also just being in there and sucking it up for 20 minutes. Like today I was in the sauna after I worked out, and not realizing it, because I was just kind of like in a mental state and thinking about just my day and everything. I was messing with my watch and I totally messed up my timer. So I'm like, all right, I guess I got to start over. We're gonna do this again, because I gotta do this. But yeah, it's a mix of things. The breath work, I discovered Wim Hof from a friend of mine, recommended it, and started getting into the breathing stuff. I was doing, so, you know, I was probably not many Green Berets or doing hot yoga, but my wife and I, when we lived in the Pinehurst area, we would go to a hot yoga studio. It was like every Sunday, just because I needed something to, you know, help me recover and gain that flexibility, because I was running and rucking and jumping out of planes and stuff. So it's always been kind of a mix, but you know, I've always been a student and always wanting to learn how to better myself athletically. And a piece of that, you know, as this entire podcast has been about, is, you know, you can work out, you can practice lacrosse, you can throw against the wall, but you know, the big key piece to that is what is it that can help me develop mentally, that mental toughness, that resilience. You know, when you lose, to be able to pick yourself up and shake it off and get to the next, you know, challenge. So those are some things I do now. You know, it's a mix mosh of stuff. I don't have, I wish I had a dedicated routine that I could write down in a book and sell it next to JB's and become a bestseller. But it's really just stuff that I'm kind of like learning day to day. So, you know, if I have the opportunity to jump in the sauna, I'll do the sauna. If I have the ice bath available, I'll do the ice bath. So if I can do breath work, I'll do breath work. I make sure I'm always stretching. So yeah, just very, very mindful of all that.
Ben, so, you know, another time, you know, you do all these touch points and I pick up on it. And Ben and I were in DC at a conference. We were sharing a hotel room, and, you know, we had to go in like 10 minutes to something else.
Oh, yeah.
and Ben said, I need 5 minutes. And I remember, Ben, you took your prosthetics off, you hopped up on the bed, you were in, you know, just kind of sitting up, and I think you just went to sleep for 5 minutes and you were at like another place, and then you woke up and it was like you just drank 12 espressos. I was just like, I was like, okay, I got to learn that, because that was that was really good, because we were running and gunning all day, and we had to go again. We were at this big conference, and Ben and I had to be on, and you took this 5 minutes of just resetting yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying about being a student and learning about these techniques, it's also about understanding the importance of recovery, and realizing that if you can just give yourself 5-10 minutes to shut down and recover, that's what's needed sometimes. I remember doing stuff like that during like early ball for soccer, when you got like 3 days, or for lacrosse, or even hockey, when you're constantly on the ice, being able to just take a couple of minutes to yourself to mentally recover, mentally prepare. Another moment I remember in this Q course during small unit tactics, SUT, which is basically like an abbreviated version of Ranger School. One of our instructors told us, we're out in the woods, we're moving, we're tired, and just logistically we're waiting for the trucks to come get us. And he said, look, he's like, if you got 10 minutes, he's like, we call it GBNT, Green Beret nap time. Like, shut down for 10 minutes. He's like, you're going to need it, because you're going to be up for the next 24 hours moving. So GBNT, I still do it today.
Ben, on this final note, before we close this out, I'll tell you too, for everyone listening, this isn't just limited to athletes. We're always in a rush, and people, I don't have the time. And JB just said it. You only need 5 minutes. Sometimes you only need 2 minutes. I think for the listeners, you'd be surprised what you can do to reset your brain and body with just 2 minutes, right? And then expand upon it. All right. This is something, again, not to the masterful level that you have it, but I've started doing this over the last couple of years, and I am blown away by what I'm able to do if I just take that 2-minute break every few hours, but like you said, before a new event starts. I need to reset myself. I feel kind of that tightness in my chest every once in a while. It's rare, but I go, okay, I got to stop and reset. We kind of been taught, I think incorrectly, that mental fitness and mental toughness, it can be perceived as weakness. And it's actually quite the opposite, right? The most mentally tough people, Ben, you're obviously the gold standard for that for me. Do this, multiple times a day. And with that said, Ben, I got to be honest with you. I really, really appreciate you, sharing your story. All right. B, coming on here and talking with us and setting an example. Because I honestly cannot think of a lighter beam of light for this process with mental fitness than you. I mean, you are the champion of it, right? You don't need a book to tell it, because your story alone is something, like I said earlier, it's an anchor, right? So for our listeners out there, you're allowed to have a bad day. You're allowed to have tough times, but you have to have anchors. Ben's story is an anchor, right? Of what he was able to do, and just what you did after this injury is mind-blowing. Again, when JB first expressed to me what you did, I mean, it sounds unbelievable, but that's just you. As I said in the intro, it's just who you are, and it's something we can all aspire to. JB, I didn't know if you want to say anything final before we let Ben go here.
No, this is great. I just, Ben, you're amazing. You're inspiration to me and my family and everybody else. But I'm going to share one funny story, because Lee, you are from Philadelphia. Okay. And the Philadelphia fans.
Born and raised.
Yes. Okay. Born. So,
Yeah.
the Philadelphia fans. So Ben and I were fortunate to be at the Super Bowl when Philadelphia beat the Patriots.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
Right. And of course it was in Minnesota. They had a snowstorm. And so then the stadium is comfortable, but we had to walk to the ride share. Right. So here's Ben, and he's got these hydraulic prosthetics, and all of a sudden he stops, and I'm like, what's the matter? He's like, my hydraulics are froze. He's like, kick my legs. So of course I'm behind him kicking his feet. And of course these Philly fans are like, hey, you. And so there's Ben and I back to back getting ready to scrap with these Philly fans, because, You try to
It was
do a
quite,
good thing.
it was quite the scene.
It was quite. It was quite. Yeah, it was quite the scene.
JB,
yeah,
I wish I had some defense, but that's exactly what Eagles fans would be doing. I'm not gonna lie. Let's try to start a fight.
So,
That's why they had the courtroom in the old vet stadium, right?
They
Yes,
still
they-
do. They
the
still
basement.
do.
they
When
still
they
have the
built
jail cell.
financial field, they still do it. Yeah.
Oh, they do.
Listen, there's two things I'll tell you just to end this episode. One is Philadelphia fans are very passionate, and nobody hates Philadelphia sports teams more than the fans of Philadelphia. That's the way I could tell. Ben, I want to thank you again for coming on today. It was really an honor. I mean that.
Yeah, Lee, JB, I appreciate it. This was a blast. I mean, honestly, I got to say, being able to talk about the mental aspect and athletics, I love this stuff. I mean, I could do this for another 3 hours. It's a passion.
Well, we'll keep you involved in everything that we're doing, and we'll make sure that you're a voice for change, because we have ambassadors on our channel. We want you to be one, and we'll tell you more about it.
100% you should be. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It'd be great.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Trades for Life, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. Once again, you can learn more about the organization and our channel Grit at pivotalmoments.org for more inspirational, entertaining, and educational content. For Ben Harrow and JB Spizo, I'm Lee Elias. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard or watched. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.